Mera Bharath. Udham Singh, The Revenge of the Orphan. From an orphanage in a remote part of Punjab in colonial India to London to assassinate one of the most powerful figures of British imperialism, Shahid Udham Singh had travelled a long road. Today, in 2021, films are made about him, his statues are a familiar sight in Punjab, and places are named after him. More than 100 years after his birth, Udham Singh, Udham meaning the upheaval, has come to be celebrated as the vibrant icon of the Indian freedom movement. His background was the lowest of the low. He was born Sher Singh in 1899 in Sunam near Lahore, British India, to manual labourer Sehal Singh and Narayan Kaur. When he and his brother Sadhu were 3 and 5 years old respectively, his mother died. His father took care of them while he worked as a labourer in the Punjab canal colonies. The canal colonies were another enterprise of the British to exploit the land and labour of Indians. Soon Tehal Singh died, leaving the two young boys in the care of an uncle. The uncle, however, finding himself unable to fend for them, handed them over to the Central Khalsa Orphanage. The orphanage renamed him Udham Singh, and he was affectionately called Uday. In 1918 he joined the British Army and served in Basra and Baghdad in Iraq as a carpenter and as a mechanic during World War I. In 1919, when he returned to his orphanage in Amritsar, North India was embroiled in protests against the draconian Rowlatt Act. 13 April 1919 was a momentous day in the history of India's freedom movement. Many villagers were assembled at Jallianwala Bagh, Amritsar, to celebrate the festival of Baisakhi. The garden had only one entrance and exit to it. General Reginald Dyer ordered his troops to open fire on the innocent men, women, and children who were trapped in the garden. Hundreds died in the massacre. Udham Singh, as a member of the orphanage, had been serving water to the people assembled and was witness to the gory incident. The Lieutenant Governor of Punjab, British India, at that time, Michael O'Dwyer, supported and endorsed Dyer's action. O'Dwyer later retired and returned to England. Udham Singh soon became involved in the revolutionary politics of Bhagat Singh, and he sought to overthrow colonial rule. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. After his release, he made his way to Germany by land via Kashmir, evading the police. He then reached London, where he found work as an engineer, all the time plotting to assassinate O'Dwyer. On 13 March 1940, Udham Singh was ready to carry out his plan. He purchased a pistol from a soldier and hid it inside a book, the pages of which had been carved out in the shape of a revolver. On that day, O'Dwyer had finished speaking at the meeting of the East India Association and the Central Asian Society at Caxton Hall in London. Udham, who was seated in the audience, walked up to him and shot him point blank. O'Dwyer died on the spot. Udham was arrested and faced trial. When he was convicted, he made a speech, which was published years later only. He was executed on 31st July 1948 at Pentonville Prison. Years later, in 1974, the casket containing his remains were repatriated to India. The casket was received by Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister. His ashes now lie in 7 places, such as Haridwar, Kiratpur Sahib, Roza Sharif, Sunam, a museum at Jallianwala Bagh, and in 2 urns at the Shaheed Udham Singh College in Sunam. Legacy. Sunam town was renamed Sunam Udham Singh Wala. His house was converted into a museum. His statue has been installed at the main entrance of Jallianwala Bagh, Amritsar. His story has been made the subject of many films produced in 1977, 2003, and more recently in the 2021 movie Sardar Udham.